Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Colleen and it is getting close to Christmas time. And I feel like we're maybe all not as prepared as we'd like to be, and that perhaps things might be a little tight, and there's nothing quite like a homemade gift for Christmas, especially something you've taken some time to cook and prepare. This recipe that I'm going to share with you today is something that you may never have thought of making, or even what the process was to making it, but it is something that's relatively easy. It uses mostly things you probably already have on hand, and it is a wonderful gift to receive as well as one to give. So today we're going to make homemade marshmallows. And I'm going to gather up what I need, and I will be back here in just a moment and we'll get started. So the first thing that you need to have for this process is a 9 by 13 and a half, is it? The larger pan. I wish I had one that had slopes that went straight up, but I don't. I have one that's kind of rounded, which is okay. We'll use the scraps here and make it pretty as we go along. So I've lined it with parchment paper, and the best way that you can. And I'm just going to grease the parchment paper really, really well, because the hardest part of making marshmallows is to get them out of the pan when you're done. First, to make the marshmallow lay in the pan, and then to get them out of the pan. That will be your biggest challenge. So make sure that you oil every bit of the paper. And because it's parchment paper, sometimes it tends to pool up, but for the most part, doing this, giving it a good grease, will really be helpful to you in the end. And we want to get it all over, as I said, every part, even the glass edges that might stick through, because we're just going to loosen them after. And we are going to cover every bit of this. This would be a time that you could use the cheap paper. You know, if you cook with parchment paper, you know what I'm talking about. Parchment paper comes in cheap paper that isn't as good, and then it comes in the better paper that actually works really well. This would be the time to use the cheap paper because it's going to absorb more of the oil. Now, I think that is a pretty good cover all around. And so now I'm going to set this aside. Now, here we go on to the next step. And for the next step, I'm just going to reach back here and draw just a half a cup of cold water. And I'm going to open 3 packets of Knox gelatin, or whatever kind of gelatin you're used to using. This one is one that's readily available here in Canada. Actually, maybe I should show you the box. And we it's the only one really that I have used, to be quite honest, and the one that so it's the one I'm most familiar with, I guess. This is completely unflavored gelatin, and I'm just going to dump it in this bowl, and then I'm going to pour in the water. And I might just give it a little stir, not too drastically. If I see it, if I see any dry spots, I'll give it a stir, but otherwise I just leave it to bloom. And we're going to leave it for 15 minutes. Now, the next step in the process is we need a pot. Now, into a pot, and it's a medium-sized pot, I'm going to add 1.5 cups of sugar, just your regular white granulated sugar. Just 1.5. I know I'm not being too careful with my measures, but I know this works. I'm going to do that. I'm going to add a half a cup of water to this sugar. And then I'm going to add 1 1/4 cups of white corn syrup to the water and sugar that's in the container. Now, white corn syrup is not something I have on hand all the time. It's one of those things you either have it and you have it maybe for a couple of years, or you don't have it. And I didn't have it at the moment, so I had to go to the store and pick up a container. Now, this container will probably make close to 2 batches of marshmallows. I'm just gonna pour the first cup into the pot, and then I need 1/4 more, which is about that much. Yeah, it might not make 2 batches. So if you're considering a budget for your holiday giving, you might want to think about that. I think it was around $3 and maybe a half for that container. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a stir. And then I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt. There we go. Now I'm going to take this to the stove top, and I will bring you along for part of the process. Once we get it onto the stove top, we're going to cook it until a candy thermometer reads 240 degrees. I think, I don't know if most people have a candy thermometer anymore, but this is probably the most important tool to have for this kind of a process. So my candy thermometer isn't a fancy one. It's one that I picked up at the dollar store a couple of years ago, and I think I paid $3 for it maybe. And it's just got a little notch you move into the spot where you want it to stop at, and that helps your eye to stay on the spot. So I'm going to bring it to a boil and we'll get it going. So follow me along. Now you want to be stirring this quite frequently, because between the corn syrup and the sugar, they can stick really hard in this pot. So you want to kind of keep it on the move until it comes to a boil and the crystals in the sugar dissolve. There are so many things that we can make that don't require a lot of outlay of cash on our part, I guess. A few years ago, I went into the grocery store. Mind you, I had the jelly jars already, so if you had to purchase the jelly jars, it would be a little more expensive, but I just bought organic juice from the grocery store, and from that organic juice I made jelly that I gave away to friends. Just put a little piece of cloth over the top, kind of an old-fashioned thing, and a bit of twine with a simple note saying what kind of jelly it was, and it was really well received. People asked about it often. There's so many little things. If you have a look around YouTube, you can find all sorts of ideas that won't cost you a lot, but show people that you were thinking of them during the season. And that's really the most important part, isn't it? That we're thinking about each other and all trying to work through these hard times and still have some sort of semblance of celebration as we go. Okay, now I'm just going to set you to watch this for a minute. And here we are, we've reached the magic number, so I'm just going to take it off the stove now. viscosity of it. So I'm gonna have to slow it down and make sure that I'm ready, because it's gonna slop all over the place. And you'll notice as I do this, there's going to be strings of candy that I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons, or approximately, of vanilla to the mixture. And I'm going to continue to thread in the hot syrup. You've got to be patient at this point in the mixing, because if you put it all in too fast, it doesn't mix as good. I'm just going to coax that last little bit out of there, because you take this to the hardball stage, so it doesn't take it long to get stuck in the pot. And I want every bit of that to go into my bowl. It's kind of a messy undertaking to make marshmallows. Now, I am going to right away put some hot water in this pot, because if I don't, it will be horrible to clean afterwards. Now this seems to be mixing pretty good. I'm just going to stop it for a second and make sure that I've got everything scraped down. Now I'm going to set this up. I'm going to set it up, bring it up to high speed, and let it go on high speed, or, you know, so that it doesn't come out of the bowl. And I'm going to let that go on for 10 minutes to add volume. Now I've just ensured that my marshmallow pan has oil all over it again, because it tends to separate a little bit on the parchment paper. And then I am going to get this into the pan. Once I have it all leveled off, I am going to put it in the fridge where it should set for at least 6 hours. So I will be back when I have that process completed. You can see what a difference it makes. That's why you must work quickly. Well, I have my marshmallow all prepared in the pan, and now I'm just going to mix up this powder because the marshmallow is really super sticky, so we need to get a coating on it. So I'm going to use about half and half. This is a half cup measure, and it doesn't have to be really precise, but this is a half cup of cornstarch. And I'm going to add to that a half cup of icing sugar. And I'm going to mix those up, and then I am going to flour my surface that I'm going to fold the marshmallow out onto, and we'll start that process. There you go. Now this is the sticky part, and it can be really, really sticky, but you don't want to skimp this part for sure. So I'm going to pull this over and start to unfold it. And I'm really glad I oiled everything so well, because that came out rather painlessly, actually. If you do not get enough on there, trust me when I say it will be super, super stuck to your paper no matter what you're doing to it. Now, I think I've got it all covered here. This is important to do this every time. Now I'm just going to find something that we'll cut this into cubes. And this is tricky too. So I am going to do my best job of doing this because it will stick to the knife. I hope that you're all seeing that okay. And then you just work your way through. And don't forget each time that you're going to need to powder up your knife again, because it will get sticky. I hope everyone is prepared for Christmas and that you all have plans that are close to home, because it doesn't sound like things are going to be much better for us this Christmas than they were last, as far as the virus goes. And I think about you all every day. So I do hope that you're all taking precautions to look after yourselves, and that we'll get through this round without any problems. Well, of course, there's going to be some problems, but realistically, I want to see you all on the other side of this. So now I'm just going to work on the sides. Make sure that each time I cut, those cuts get a bit of mixture on them. And work my way through. This was not something that my grandmother did, or at least not that I'm aware of, either of my grandmothers. My mom taught me how to make marshmallow, and I think she only made it a time or two that I recall. But it is definitely a messy proposition, but it's also a delicious one. And when you float these little cubes onto the top of a hot chocolate, or you use them for baking, or however you want to use them, you will find they are absolutely delicious. And as you saw earlier, they don't take an awful lot of ingredients, so some of these I'm going to be very, very careful to cut into perfect little cubes for gift giving. Now you could also be roasting some coconut in the oven, just lightly toast it, and when it's still quite moist, which this isn't now because I've left it for a day or two, but if it was still super moist, you would be able to roll it in the coconut. And it is so good done that way. I'm just running out of time as the holidays are upon us. Well, here we are, folks. They are beautiful and springy and moist. Still have a lot of powder on them. I will probably take a small brush and I'll brush some of that powder off because we don't need it all on there. But other than that, these are a wonderful little gift to share with friends or to keep for yourself. I hope that everyone's doing really well, and I look forward to seeing you back here in the new year. I'd like to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from our house to your house. Please take care, everyone. I'll talk to you soon.